Hello. So I thought I'd play Children of Morta for a bit, and and I guess I'd talk about a couple things that are close to my heart. So I'm a liberal. I believe in free speech. I believe in the idea that if people are left to their own devices, generally speaking, they'll that they'll generally do the right thing. And I used to be kind of an SJW, and I wasn't the best person. Like, I remember thinking to myself, if I force other people to do good, then my own actions will be excused. And, I mean, it was sort of like, if I beat up the bullies, then I'll be good. That's kind of how it manifested. And, of course, I was a bully myself sometimes. So, like, it didn't pan out that way. Yeah. And, honestly, I was more interested in socialism than I was in liberalism to a certain extent. But liberalism always appealed to me more when I found out about it. So I'd study socialism more than liberalism. But I came from a conservative background, and like it just seemed to me that due to certain types of abuse from my father, like physical abuse and emotional abuse or verbal abuse, I'm not sure, one or the other. It was pretty rare, but like it still impacted me. And like the idea of autonomy and personal liberty didn't really it wasn't obvious to me. Like, like, like the idea of autonomy didn't make sense to me. Like, it wasn't even on the radar. Like, I knew it meant something about doing what you want, but like, I remember doing some bad stuff when I was a kid, and like I was thinking to myself, how can anyone possibly do just what they want and be a good person? And what happened was my grandparents are liberal, Like, they believe in a liberal education, they believe in liberal values. They're, I mean, when gay rights was the thing that wasn't, like, the right to marriage wasn't a thing, they probably would have been okay with gay marriage. Like, they weren't progressive, but they had a certain liberal disposition. They tended towards this compassionate and sympathetic. And I was attracted to the judgmental parts of things a fair bit. Although, I think I remember, if I remember correctly, um, it was more of a sort of like, well, I'm bad, but I'm not that bad sort of argument. And I did some pretty horrible stuff. Like in grade 5, I pulled a girl's hair because the teacher taught down to me. And I didn't win any friends because of it. But I remember feeling resentful towards the teachers that would talk down to me and stuff. And thinking to myself, well, if they didn't talk down to me, I wouldn't behave like that. Which was selfish. And basically just sort of excusing my own behavior by appealing to by appealing to the idea that the authorities were to blame for my behavior, not myself. And like, it reminds me of Black Lives Matter a little bit, or Antifa, or Nick Fuentes when he says that following the law is for gays. Well, he uses the F word. That's a slur for gay, but yeah. And it's like, no, we're all responsible for our own behaviors. I mean, don't get me wrong, to a certain extent, there's a mitigating circumstance when authority figures mislead us. But there has to be some responsibility for one's own personal behavior. And And that took me a long time to really figure out. Like, I didn't figure it out until I was like 17 or something. I mean, I kind of had some idea that I was wrong.
Sand swept across the land, scraping against the stone of a monument built not from devotion, but blood and sweat. Atop it stood a Nairaha, with the lost ruler Bushra waiting.
Yeah. Like, I had an idea that bullying was wrong, so I generally didn't engage in it too much. But, that incident in grade 5 really, didn't really do me good. Like, I didn't really, wasn't to my credit. And, once I basically accepted this, sorry, it was about age 15 that I accepted this. But, um, yeah, once I accepted it, I started making friends again. Yeah. And I started normaling up. But two things happened, or three things happened. One, I discovered liberalism as an ideology, and it appealed to me more than socialism. Two, I moved in with my grandparents from my dad's place, and them being liberals, they showed me how to behave in a decent fashion. Like, I was going full Nietzsche or something before that, and like full postmodernist before that. Oh. And I remember being 15 and thinking to myself, there's four propositions I have for God. If God exists, but he's all powerful and all knowing, then he's God, and he hasn't shown himself to me yet, so I don't know. If he's all powerful but not all knowing, then he's probably physics, like the laws of physics. If he's not all knowing, but he's all if he's not all powerful but he's all knowing, then he's basically impotent. And if he's not all powerful and he's not all knowing, then he's an alien or something. And there's this other, but I missed the part where God could be all knowing and all powerful without directly interfering with the world. There's an idea that came to mind eventually later in life, in that he could have created the world in such a way that messages from him would get to different people. And like, I studied synchronicity. And had some experiences with it that convinced me that God's existence, or convinced me that God exists. But I don't begrudge people being atheists. I think that it's one of those things that you have to experience in order to believe it, because it's definitely weird. And yeah, So, like, an honest atheist is someone I can admire, even though I'm a deist myself. Yeah. Yeah. And I picked up on my deism about 3 to 4 years ago. And, like, I was kind of like terrified at first because of like, oh, what if God judges me? And I was like, I better judge myself hard. And I came to the conclusion that I deserve to die, which apparently I've given God every excuse to take my life, and He hasn't done it. So, like, I don't think He wants me to die. I could be wrong, but honestly, I've tried to die a lot. So, yeah. But I'm hopeful that I was just making a mistake and that I'm like genuinely repentant for my previous misdeeds. And yeah. Oh. Anyways, so that's a odd tangent of mine. It's something that's weighing heavily on me. But yeah. One thing I one thing that I'm One thing that I've wrestled with recently, however, is like it's not that I was dedicated to it or anything like that, but like there's been a couple times where I'm kind of like thinking to myself, life is struggle, and fascism declares struggle is a good thing. Maybe it is, but freedom is even more important. Like, one shouldn't be libertine, one shouldn't just. One shouldn't be libertine. One shouldn't just do the most degenerate, selfish stuff that one can for minor convenience sake. Or for a thrill. But but free will is the freedom that makes everything other virtue. Like, it's a virtue that makes other virtues possible. If you were just an automaton, you couldn't be credited or blamed for anything you've done. And you'd just be a useless automaton.
4 steps were to be taken in the correct order. Breaking the circle would prevent the summoning. A new challenger appeared.
And I found that C.S. Lewis really helps, because he's the one that argued free will makes everything else possible. And respecting people's free will, like, you can you can go as far as to shame someone for bad behavior if they should be ashamed, but you shouldn't mob them and take away their livelihood.
The air was still with energies, coiled and ready to let loose.
Yeah. Yeah, so I found C.S. Lewis to be very comforting. His treatise on free will is pretty good. Um, I've yet to watch or listen to the Screw Tape Letters, but I've listened to Mere Christianity, which is his treatise on the basics of Christian faith, and a lot of his morality I can say I agree with. Anyways, yeah. So I used to have a lot of sort of BLM, Antifa sort of sensibilities. And I used to be pretty hateful of the world. But gradually over time, as the socialists became more and more intolerant, starting with free speech in the Occupy days, which I was for, um, I found that the people that are against free speech are some of the most defunct, degenerate, selfish people around who have the most to criticize. And a lot of the time, they're the people who really.
The old man explained that yesterday's secrets and even tomorrow's legends can be found written in the stars. Unfortunately, an eyeglass broken in yesterday's haste would not allow vision into tomorrow's unknown. The sage looked upon the Bergson for help. The nearby mines could luckily supply the materials needed to craft a new lens. All the young boy would need was someone to watch over him while he gathered them.
Yeah. So the people that can't stand free speech when it's criticizing them, but they want free speech for themselves, they're not just hypocrites. They're some of the worst hypocrites. Like, literally, they think they can do no wrong, and by that logic, their worst successes become intolerable because they don't self reflect on their own sins. And Christianity basically says everyone's sinful to a degree, so everyone has things they need to repent about, which is a little extreme for me in a lot of ways. But like the core of it is basically like, don't judge too harshly because you'll be judged by the same measure and it's possible you won't stand up to scrutiny. And I find that, like, if SJWs didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have standards at all. And sometimes I wonder if I don't have double standards too. But, like, I'm constantly on guard for double standards on my own part. And I've done the necessary work to repent for my sins.
With the eyeglass replaced, the two turned back to the heavens. Tomorrow's legend resting beyond the horizon, while yesterday's secrets hid nearby. Tired of being called shady, he instead adopted the title Mysterious Shopkeep.
Alright, boss fight. I haven't been here for a while.
The manipulator of the disenfranchised, the leader of rats, with fingers sharp as daggers and a soul lacking its humanity. truth was, no one chooses the life of a thief. The crystal was calling the hero back, through a path opened anew from the sacred city of Raha, the spirit of wind and weather. The Bergson felt a strange wariness as home beckoned. The chamber groaned and trembled, darkness replacing light. Above, the family waited to eat, comfort replacing vigilance. Snatched, gone, dread replacing happiness. One body was taken, but two souls were in need of rescue.